All right. Hello, my hardworking, intelligent, and awesome students. I'm Teacher Riga, and today let's talk about first language English writer's effect section. So, for the 2020 to 2026 papers, that's question 2, C, and D. Let's pull up a past year paper. So, this is the May-June 2021 variant 12 paper. So this is what I'm talking about. So C, use one example from the text below to explain how the writer suggests the contrast between the narrator and the base people living permanently on the base. So when you get the words writer suggests, you know it's a writer's effect question. So C is much more specific to the situation. We have to find a phrase that matches the instructions, the question more. But then D is much more flexible in that you get these two big paragraphs and you can choose any words or phrases that convey meaning and create effect, right? But again, big giveaways that this is what we're talking about, writer's effect. So writer's effect is all about being able to see the cool things that the writers are doing. It's on purpose. They're choosing these words with a lot of thought, consciously, deliberately, right? They're like, I'm going to use this word to make you feel this certain way. That's why if you take horror stories, for example, it's always like the door is creaking and the lights are flickering. And if you look out the window, it's storming, right? Thunder, lightning, you know? These tropes, like they're using them to their advantage, to the best of their abilities. So of course, when you are in year 11, like you're 15, 16, 17, you've read a lot of books and watched a lot of movies. So you get a sense of what makes a good story, what makes good writing, right? But you might still be relying on instinct, like on the spot, whatever comes to you, you're going to write like spontaneously. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? So that's like the early stages of writing. But these writers, like when you get way more skilled, like they know all the tools in their toolbox, they have all the techniques. So whether they're having a good day or a bad day, whatever the topic is, whether they find it easy or difficult, they will be able to write something brilliant. Because imagine like having a color pencil box, like, I don't know, 24 colors, 48 colors, like, and you know every single color in it, and you can choose, pick and choose the best. And you're not just like blindly like taking color pencils and like making your art, you know? So just so you know, like you have to understand these writers are locked in, like they know what they're doing. They know they're doing this on purpose. So this is what writer's effect is about. So of course, you will need to apply these techniques in your paper two when you do your compositions. But in paper one, writer's effect is all about recognizing what good writers are doing, right? To be able to notice the cool techniques and explain them out. Okay? So we're going to learn some techniques to help you brainstorm, to help you notice how something is cool and to be able to explain what's cool about it, right? And this is the old papers, right? In 2027, there's going to be a rollout of new papers, right? I was looking at the Cambridge website and looking at the specimen papers. And so the questions are a bit different now. So writer's effect will be under question 3. We still have C, right? It looks like a similar format here, C, and then D is also still there. But instead of two paragraphs, we now have one paragraph and it's put right in front of our eyes. And we still have to find three words or phrases that are unique and meaningful and powerful. So it's still there. So you need to learn these techniques regardless. And don't worry, the new questions in the 2027 paper are basically writer's effect questions. Like the reading comprehension part, question one, they've added F here like this. Why does the writer use the word explosion? Why does the writer explain what the writer suggests about horses in the phrase? These are basically writer's effect questions. They're trying to make you do the same techniques. So whatever you're going to learn in this video today, you can use it for the new paper as well. For question F1, 2, and then for question 2, now summary is question 2. But there's like this little baby question, question B here, assess the writer's attitude towards the cloning of endangered animals. Attitude, that's basically writer's effect as well. So you can still use all the old past year paper questions to practice, is what I mean, to prepare yourself for the new papers. But though the questions look a bit different, they are basically writer's effect questions, right? So let's get down to the techniques so you can get your A star. Okay, but before that, we have to understand how to talk about cool words and phrases. So I usually have some slides up for my students. So let's look at them. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. So writer's effect. Now, you have to notice these words that are impactful, powerful, unique, that stand out, meaningful, moving, right? And usually these are the big words, the more advanced vocabulary, because they're much more specific in definition and meaning. So look at the big words, the long words, the specific words, right? It could be nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, right? Look at them closely. Words that, if you take them out of the sentence won't have the same oomph, like it won't have the same power, like impact, like it won't make you feel the same. Those are the words that we're looking for, or phrases, right? Okay. But when we find these phrases, how are we going to explain how they're special, right? A lot of teachers are like, oh, just write whatever comes to your mind. But sometimes you're blanking out and you need some help. So here's your help. So I'm going to take you through a few techniques that can help you brainstorm explaining why something is special, right? Developing your phrase, your word. Okay. So you have to understand that our brain is wonderful and it's a computer, right? It has all this data of all these words you've learned growing up and where you've used them and when you've used them and how to use them, right? So think about it like when you see a word, when you use a word, it branches out. Like there's a full mind map, all these connections that you're making in your mind from all the lived experiences you've had, right? From everything you've watched, read, experienced, right? So it's like a spider web. It's a mind map, all these connections. And these are some ways to think about that. But first, to ease my students in, I always tell them, okay, think of an actual picture, an actual image first, and tell me what comes to mind when you see this picture. So I might show them like Starry Night. And then, you can take a second, you can pause this video and, just list down anything and everything that comes to your mind and then play this video again. I'll give you a second. So, yes, it could be that, you know, oh, I see a lot of blues and greens, a night sky, it's swirling, something magical about it, something, I don't know, does it make you feel sad because of the blue? What about this? Is this a fire? Is this some kind of darkness? It's a village, right? There are so many words going on in your mind. This is the scream, so you can take a second to brainstorm anything that comes to your mind when you see this picture. Hmm. So yeah, maybe like fear, anger, uh, scared, anxiety. Is this like a river? Is it falling apart? The sky, is it angry, sunset, but also, right? Like, what are those two people in the distance? Like, does it make you feel like you're being watched or they're coming for you? You know, brainstorm. Yes. So when you see pictures, a million thoughts race through your mind. And I want you to understand the same goes for words, because words make you think of pictures in your mind, right? What comes to mind when you see this word? So you can take a second, the word car, and yeah, pull up a pencil and paper, do a mind map. Anything that comes to your mind when you think of the word car. And so you might come up with something like this, like, oh, it's a form of transportation. There's carpooling, there's different types of cars, there's different brands of cars, there's different car parts that you could have written about, right? Tires, engine. Oh, cars require maintenance, and oh, it saves time, convenience, and oh, the electric cars, or they run on petrol. Fast, slow, accidents. There's so many thoughts that come to your mind when you think of this word. So I just want you to use this technique, like of thinking of it like, oh, when I think of this word, what are all the thoughts that come to my mind? I can write about them in my development. So yeah, you can do this. You can exercise, practice this technique, this muscle with like any word, really. Hmm. And on the surface, when you look at a word, mm, you're most likely going to think of its definition and its synonyms, right? So when you think of the word ancient, you're going to think like, oh, old, past, thousand, hundreds of years old. And then you might even think of like where you've heard this word. Then maybe you're like, oh, I've heard people use this word like with ancient civilizations, like in documentaries on like Nat Geo or History Channel. So yeah, can think about the different situations, the who, what, when, where, why, how of it all, the situations you've heard this word used in, the synonyms that come to your mind. So let's talk about definitions. So there's two types of definitions. When you first look at a word, you can think of its dictionary definition. So what you see is what it means. So this, we call it denotation. So for example, if you're looking at the word rose, then you're going to define it as a type of flower. That's it. Straightforward, cold, simple. A rose is a flower. But in our society, in real life, IRL, right? A word is never just a word. It has connotation. It has deeper meaning, symbolism. There is a deeper way we use these words, right? Meaning of the word carries emotional and cultural associations. For example, in our world, a rose is not just a rose, it symbolizes romance. That's why we're out here giving it for Valentine's Day and, anniversaries. A rose is not just a flower, right? So when you know this about words, you can unpack it, you can explore, you can unravel, like you can explain the dictionary definition of words, but you can also explain the societal connotations of words. So just to talk about connotations a bit more, because if you notice this, you can write about this in your development, your explanation, right? So some words are usually used in positive situations. Some words are always generally usually used in negative situations. So you can point this out. It's quite simple. You can just say, oh, this word or this phrase has a positive connotation or has a negative connotation. That's about it. And you can even gauge that from the context that it's in. Like in your exam, like you get a full text, like a full essay, right? And then you're looking at one paragraph, which means there's so much information around that word, that phrase, that you can absorb to understand whether this word is being used in a good or bad way, right? So you can comment on that. So I like to play this game with my students where I give them a ton of words and I tell them to put them in the table, right? Like, is this word negative, positive, or neutral? Here, there's neutral because there's like a hidden instruction here where these words, they have trios, like three words that have a similar dictionary definition, but differing societal connotations. So I asked them to like, okay, you can just divide it into good and bad, but if you want to take it a step further, you can divide it. You can find the trios, the tree group. Like there's a group, there's a pairs, there's a trio. You can find the group of three, and you can then make a spectrum out of it, like what's the most negative word and what's the most positive word, and then one of it comes in the middle where it could be used positively or negatively depending on the situation, like depending on how it's used in a sentence. So yeah. Now, for example, let's see. I mean, you can take a second, pause this video, and divide the words accordingly first. And then you can come back to the video and then we can talk about it. For example, let's see. Mm-mm-mm. Let's take smell, for example, right? There are three words here that talk about smells. Scent. Scent is neutral. But if it's a good scent, we usually use this word, right? Aroma. The aroma of the chicken curry, right? Aroma. Usually used positively. But what about this word, stench? So stench is also about smell, but we use it negatively. We use it for garbage bins, right? So this is what I mean by they come in threes and you can put them differently here. So we have stench, we have scent, and we have aroma. Let's pick something else. Control freak. Control freak is clearly a situation where you're calling someone out for this flaw that they have, right? This is a bad personality trait because they have no flexibility and they're micromanaging, like they are telling everyone what to do and not listening to anyone, and they think the idea is the best. But it is also someone who has a plan, like who has a list of things that should be done. Like they probably know what they're doing. And so if you know what you're doing, but you're not controlling everybody else, then you would just call yourself prepared. Mm. And there's also organized, right? Organized. I believe this is the trio here. Mm-mm-mm. What about weird, different, unique? That's another trio. Hmm. And I think it comes that way, right? Weird usually is used in a negative situation, like the person is trying to put you down, like trying to bully you, and they call you weird. But if they're trying to be on the fence, they would say, "Oh, you're different." But if they love what's different about you, they'll use this word, unique, right? So then it'll be weird, different, unique. Different, unique. Control freak is clearly here. Mm, in terms of prepared and organized, again, depends on the full sentence. Sometimes you can only get a word's vibe if you're seeing a full sentence, right? Or a full paragraph, like the full situation. So it could be either way. Mm, let's see, prepared and organized. Which one is better? Prepared, organized? I guess prepared is better. Organized is like you have everything where you need them to be. It's all in the folders, it's all in the correct cupboards, so you can find whatever you need whenever you need it. But like prepared is that you're thinking 2, 3 steps ahead. So you have like more done to for any situation. So I think I would go for that. But if you moved it around, like it's first language English, baby. As long as it makes sense, you're gonna get the mark. So don't worry. All answers, if it makes sense, works here. Let's see. So you get what I mean. Like, for example, confident, self-assured, arrogant, right? It's someone who knows that they're that shit. Like they know they're great, but like, of course, someone who's self-assured has that inner worth where they're like, I don't need validation from anyone else. I know I'm good, right? So I believe that's the best. Mm, but yeah, confident is like you have the skills and your skills speak for themselves. Arrogant, okay, you know what you're doing, but you think you're better than everybody else. Like you think you're superior. So that's what makes it negative, right? So yeah, then it would be arrogant is negative, confident is neutral, and then self assured is positive. Arrogant, confident, self assured. But they all, they have a similar dictionary definition, is what I mean. But the way we use them in real life is so different. And that's what you can point out about a word, a phrase, right? Confident. Self assured. Okay, yeah. So you can do that with the rest of the words. So connotations, think about that. And then classic emotions. Because we use words in particular situations, in particular emotions, you can point it out. Like some words are used in scary situations or angry situations or happy situations, right? So these are the words we're working with. So usually I give my students some time to again put all these words in a table. So you can pause this video and you can do that too, and then we'll talk about it. Should I make it bigger for you? Let's see. Okay. So yeah, you get you get my vibe, right? Like the word creaky, that's a horror story word, right? So that would be under scared. And then the word delicious. Delicious, that's a word we use in happy times when the food is great. So that's happy. Mm, jealousy. Jealousy. So you want something you don't have that somebody else has. I mean, it's connected to anger if we have these three options. But again, there's so many types of emotions, right? Have you guys heard of the emotional wheel, emotions wheel? Like it's for psychology, it's for therapy, but you can use that to identify that there are so many emotions and you can learn all the different specific words so that you can choose much more specific, explanations. So yeah, check out the emotion wheel. But yes, so here, since we have these three words, then I suppose jealousy will be very much under anger. Mm. So yeah, you can do that with the rest of these words. But I just want you to know that words have emotions behind them that you can talk about in your explanation, in your development. So this is what it is. Putting all of those thoughts about what you think about when you look at certain words, certain phrases, then I've come up with this list of techniques, this acronym, right? From looking at a lot of past year papers and the mark schemes, like what examiners think about when they look at certain words, like I think you can learn a lot from the mark schemes. I have some students who like to reverse engineer their revision as well, where they like read the questions and immediately read the answers to the mark scheme. I do that myself. So as a teacher, I'm also like marking like hundreds of papers, right? So I noticed that like I would notice how these examiners think, and it's usually these techniques that they're applying. Though of course the mark scheme writer's effect answers are not perfect, like you have to do so much more. Mm, it's just a starting point. So this is what I'm seeing, right? So if you put it together, it's S del queso. Sounds a little Spanish. I mean, you can come up with your own acronym, but this is what I have at the moment. SDELCESO, S del queso. So you can memorize these words. You can even put it at the side of your paper when you're doing your exams. So, the first thing that you can talk about when you're trying to convince me that you know why this word is special, brilliant, amazing, is that you can say it in your own words. You can paraphrase. So, what are the techniques we use for paraphrasing? Well, our classic, we're giving synonyms and definitions, words with similar meaning. And we're like, of course, you're not, any dictionary, but in the exam, like, your brain is your dictionary and you can come up with a definition of your own. Again, as long as it makes sense, you're good to go, right? And it's very on the surface, like it's very explicit, like you're just like telling me what you're seeing, right? So you're just like, yeah, giving me synonyms, definitions. It has to start from the surface and then it goes deeper and deeper, right? What's implicit, to what's hidden. So explanation here, E here stands for, as part of explaining, like you're just taking one word, right? Or one phrase, so few words, right, from the paragraph. So this is your opportunity to, in your own words, tell the full sentence or the full paragraph, like what's the bigger situation here. That's what I mean by context. And sometimes in the text, they don't really explain too deep. So you can do that. And that's why I've put the words more details there, more description. So for example, if they give like a particular sound, like boom, for example, booming, right? You can give more description about it. Like, was it loud or soft? Was it high pitched or low pitched? Was it fast or slow? So you can talk about the volume, the pace, the pitch, right? So that's what I mean by this is your opportunity to give more details. And then when I say break down language techniques, okay, that's tied to the next technique, which is language techniques. I put structural in there, but you have to talk about the language first. Structural can be like on the side, like at the end. But most of the time, if you have enough development as it is, you don't even need to go for structural. Do you guys know the difference between language and structural techniques? Hmm? So language is like, imagine making any food. Okay, let's say burger. Language techniques are the ingredients of a sentence, right? Like you need your lettuce, tomato, meat, right? Buns, right? So these are like your words, like all the words that you're choosing, your, again, nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and your figurative language, simile, metaphor, personification. Mm, so that's language techniques, the words. Structure techniques is how you put the burger together, the sequence of the words. So this is where like plot comes in, punctuation, like if you're using ellipses, mm, or like rule of thirds, that's structural. Like it's how you put the information together. So of course, when you're making a burger, you're going to put like the bun, and then you're going to put the meat, and then you're going to put the tomato, lettuce, I don't know, cheese, bun back. I mean, again, it's up to you what you like, but it's about sequencing, right? So yes, that's the difference between language versus structure. But writer's effect is all about language. So you must talk about language first and foremost. If you want, you can talk about structure at the end if there's something cool that you've noticed. But if you already have enough development, you're on a time crunch. You only have 2 hours for this paper. So how much time can you even use for this section, right? Like what, 30 minutes, So if you have enough explanation, you want to keep going as well. So yeah, focus on language techniques. And you have to know your language techniques, guys. Like if I ask you to define simile, you have to be able to do it quick and fast and effectively. Right now, I train all my students to do exactly that. So immediately when I ask them what's a simile, they know how to say, okay, so it's comparing two seemingly unrelated things by suggesting that they have a shared similarity in terms of quality or characteristic. But it's an indirect comparison, so you must use words like or as, right? Do you see the speed in which I said that? You need that. You need that because when you have that definition, then you can look at a simile and go, hey, that's a simile. That's something cool, right? Like, I mean, immediately if it's figurative language, is something cool. So that's also a dead giveaway, right? Like if it's a simile, you're definitely going to get that mark. Like it's definitely cool because it's like you're using your imagination, you're comparing it with something else. Like it's fun. That means the writer is doing a lot. Like they're doing so much. So that's always going to be a good answer. But you have to know the definition so that you can fill in the blanks. Like you can explain why this is a simile. That's like a classic way to explain, to develop. Um, for example, if you're saying like, Mark is as tall as a giraffe, right? Immediately, okay, that's a simile. You can write it down as a phrase. You can even just choose half of it, as tall as the giraffe, to be the phrase. But then you have to explain this is simile because this young man is being compared to this animal, which is one of the tallest animals on the planet. And the common characteristic that we are connecting them with is height. So, in this way, Mark's height is highlighted as being incredibly tall. And it's much more better than just saying Mark is tall, the impact isn't there. Mark is tall versus Mark is as tall as a giraffe. Now you're like, whoa, he's like tall, right? Because we're comparing him to like one of the tallest animals in the world, right? So see, you need to know the definition so that you can. This is what I mean by explain here, like break it down, and you can be like, oh, okay, so I need to explain what are the two things being compared to here, what's the common characteristic here, and what's highlighted because this comparison was made, right? So my students know to memorize the definitions of their figurative language, or like here I call it language technique, but what I mean is figurative language, especially, right? So the famous ones are simile, metaphor, personification, right? These are your classics. Metaphor is basically like simile, except that it's a direct comparison, so you don't need like or as, right? You can say A is B. So Mark is a giraffe, and then personification using human characteristics for non-human things. I say non-human things because it's not just objects. You can explain like animals, plants with it as well. So yeah, these three usually, like the paragraphs they choose for writer's effect are going to be very beautifully written, poetic, you know, paragraphs full of figurative language. So you're definitely going to want to spot them and write about them in your writer's effect. So yeah, know their definitions so that as part of your explanation, you can break it down. Like, why is this a personification? Like, why is this a simile, a metaphor, right? So yeah, that's what I mean by language techniques. And then connotations. So you can just say, oh, this word has a positive connotation, or this word has a negative connotation. And then emotions, yeah. What does this word make you feel as a reader, or what would it have made like the characters in the essay feel, Can think about it from that perspective as well. Situations here. Okay. This one, this one is a little special. It's not always applicable. I mean, all these techniques, you don't have to use every one every time. Just use whatever works for you. Situations is when, how a word has different definitions and you can use it in different situations. Yeah, that's why I've put this down here. For example, the word bloom. The word bloom, the most famous way we define it is that we think of flowers, right? When flowers reach their peak maturity, right? The height of their beauty, they open up and they look beautiful. The colors, the smell, they're gorgeous, right? So they're at their peak beauty, right? But we can also use the word bloom for other situations, like to describe a person. You can say, mm, my sister bloomed into an elegant dancer, right? So bloomed here means like became, grew, developed, right? So here it means like the height of success, right? Like you are, mm, you've practiced, you've put in the time, energy, and effort, the blood, sweat, and tears, and now you are reaping the benefits of like beautiful skills, right? So then, if that second sentence was what is written in the essay, right? My sister bloomed into an amazing dancer. As part of your explanation, you can describe the other way that word is used too. And you can say, oh, this word is usually used when talking about flowers at the peak of their beauty. And so now you can connect it back, link it back to the way it's used in the text, right? In the insert, right? Where you can say, oh, this makes the sister look much more beautiful as well, because now you are imagining, you're thinking of flowers around her. Yeah. So the other definitions of a word, other ways that a word is used, other situations that a word is used in, helps you think about the way it is used in the sentence, in the insert. This is what I mean by situations. Okay. Overall effect here, it's not part of the explanation development technique. I just put it there because my students always forget to write it. Like, because for question 2D, right, you also have to look at the three words and phrases that you've chosen and think about what they all have in common. I think about it as like a summarizing what they all have in common, like a conclusion. So you have to say what they all mean together. So a lot of students forget to write it. So I've put it here, and it's in the mark scheme. You can check it out. Like, it's called overview or overall effect, right? So you can put it at the start or the end of your answer paragraphs. Don't worry, I'll take you through model answers over the course of this playlist. We'll look at a lot of past year papers. So just absorb all the information, and later you will see them in action, and then you will understand them better. Yeah. So yeah, just memorize this for now. as del queso, SDELCESO. Synonyms, definitions, explanations, language techniques, connotations, emotions, situations, overall effect. Oh, yeah. For the word synonyms and emotions, I've put in the words 3. So this is a number I recommend, like not just to write one synonym, but to write 3 synonyms. Not just to write one emotion, but to write 3 emotions. And when it comes to emotions, sometimes there is nuance, like there are layers, there are a few different emotions playing in a phrase, right? But sometimes what I mean is just like to write the same word 3 different ways, like to give synonyms. Like instead of just writing happy, I want you to write happy, joyful, cheerful, right? Yeah, I just want like 3 synonyms, like 3 emotions. I think it bulks up your answer. It makes it seem like you know more of the word, like how special the word is. So if you need a number, I would say go for 3 synonyms and 3 emotions. I'll tell you how I do that in a second as well when we look at an example question. Ooh, this one, this is these are some phrases that you can use to start off your sentences, to be the glue here. So is impactful because. So if you're putting the phrase, then you can write, oh, this phrase is impactful because, is powerful because, stood out because, adds meaning in this way. So suggest, showcase, signifies. So yeah, these are all saying the same thing. It's just I don't want you to use the same words all the time. You know, you're a good writer when you can say the same thing in different ways. So you want to memorize some of these words. Evokes, invokes, elicits. These ones you can use for the emotions, right? This word evokes the emotions of happiness, joy, and cheer. You know, enhances, amplifies, heightens. So some can be used for specific techniques, right? Yeah, gives a feeling of, impression of. That's for emotions. Is associated to, is connected to. That's if you want to talk about different definitions, different situations a word is used in, right? So yeah, these are just ways to start your sentences. Some of my students, they embed their answers, like they immediately go into their explanation and they can do it seamlessly. Some of my students don't care for that. They want me to give them structure. So I tell them, okay, firstly, you just write down the word or phrase you've chosen, right? And you just use one of these adjectives. You can say the word, and then you can put your open and closed inverted comma to show that you've copied this from the text, from the paragraphs, right? So put that and then just put down your phrase, and then you can say is impactful, is powerful, strong, brilliant, compelling, interesting. So you can memorize some adjectives. And then after that, you go on to explain why it's impactful and powerful and strong, right? So some of my students, they're very like, fill in the blanks. You know, they're like, okay, the first thing I have to do is just write it down, write that word or phrase down. I'll do right just that, and then I'll explain it. I would say you should give, if you're aiming for an A star and thinking about the time limits, I think 3 sentences of development would be good. If it's maybe longer, maybe you can get away with 2, but I think 3 would be good. Okay, so let's just look at one sentence for now before looking at past year paper, full paragraphs. So let's look at this one sentence. And let's just choose one impactful word here. Jason's obsession with playing his violin is what won him that prestigious competition. Okay, so the advice for you here is that words that are big, specific, advanced vocabulary, those are the words that usually stand out. And without those words, like if you take them off the sentence, they wouldn't have the same impact, right? So there are many words you can work with in this sentence, but let's just take the word prestigious, right? That's a big word, specific word, right? Long word, and without it, it won't be the same, right? Jason's obsession with playing his violin is what won him that competition. No, that's not a prestigious competition. That's not just any competition, it's the competition, right? So, okay, so we know we're on the right track. Like that word, even just picking a good word gets you 1 mark, right? So, okay, let's pick the word prestigious. And let's use S del queso to help us brainstorm a good development. So let's just underline the word prestigious first. And when I'm first teaching writer's effect to students, like in year 10, I tell them that they can use Google, like they can use dictionaries to help them out. But over time, they have to rely completely on their brain because that's all you have during an exam. But you can get help, especially when it comes to definition, synonyms, that you can easily Google to help you out. So if you're starting out and if you feel like you don't have the confidence yet to do it completely on your own, feel free to use Google first. So let's see. Underline. Okay. So that's the word we've chosen. Estel queso. Oh, I want a new box. Yes. Estel queso. And it should be used in that order. You should go for on the surface explanation and then only deeper explanation, right? So go for the synonyms, definitions, explanation first, and then go for the connotation and emotions. Okay? Okay. So if you Google the word prestigious, what are the synonyms? There'll be many synonyms, right? So pick 3 that you like, right? Let's go for like the best type of answer. So 3 synonyms, right? Mm, so let's see, 3 synonyms. If I'm Googling it, I get the words reputable. I'm just picking ones that I like. Acclaimed, distinguished. Okay, let's go for definition. This is what Google's telling me. High status. Inspiring respect and admiration. Okay. Explanation. So, what is the context in which this word is being used? It's talking about a competition. So, describing a violin competition. Mm, a violin competition. Of course, the more synonyms we can use, the better. We don't want to be copy pasting in your own words, right? So maybe you can say tournament instead of competition. Mm, okay. All right. So these are our on the surface development. What about connotation? So this word is basically being used in a positive way, in a positive situation, right? Okay. So we'll just write positive. And then as del, oh yeah, language technique. Language technique, well, that's more for if it's a figurative language, right? If it's a simile, metaphor, personification, then you want to point that out and you want to explain it. But in this case, it's just a word. You can do word class. You can say it's a effective adjective. You can do that. So language technique, adjective. I mean, it can help you out when you write the full sentence. Connotation. emotion. Okay, so he's winning this really awesome competition. So he must feel happy. Jason must feel happy, right? Okay, happy. Is there anything else he might feel? Well, he might be very proud of himself, right? So happiness, pride. And then again, I like to give three words, the rule of thirds. I like that. And it feels like you know what you're talking about when you're giving three words instead of one. So I'm just gonna give a synonym. I'm gonna say like joy. Right. Okay. In terms of situation, this word is being used the way it usually is the most famous definition for it. So I don't really think of any other connections, any other ways prestigious is used. So I won't be using situation here. And overall effect, that's for like the full paragraph, full answer paragraph when you've picked all three words and phrases. So I think I'm good to go. Okay, so yes, when you're first trying to master writer's effect, you can do this slow and steady. You can write down like one by one all these different techniques and all the little answers, and then you can put it all together into complete sentences. You can use Google, you can take your time with it. But over time, right, like you should be able to be quick and fast and to immediately go for the sentences, right? So, okay, how do you write this sentence right now? Let's write it over here. So, firstly, we have to point out the cool word, the word, open and closed inverted commas, prestigious. If you want to just stop it there, you can just use an adjective, is impactful, full stop, done, 1 mark. If you want to continue on with the explanation, some students feel like it saves time, then you can continue it because, right? So yes, let's write our synonyms then first. I'm not very particular about the order of things. At this point, it's like you want to just create logical, good sentences that flow, that make sense as you read them. So if you want to just do synonyms, you can even be very obvious by mentioning that it's a synonym. You can just say is impactful as it is similar to, right? I'm basically giving away that these are synonyms. Reputable, acclaimed, and distinguished. Done. Then maybe I can use the explanation of what is it describing. So I can say it showcases that the tournament, right? The violin tournament, Jason has successfully won. Okay, then here is a good opportunity for us to put the definition, right? Okay, is of high status, inspiring, respect, and admiration. Okay, so we put the definition there. What else? Okay, connotation. We can be very straightforward here. This adjective has a positive connotation. Done. Okay. It evokes emotions of happiness, joy, and pride. Hold on, let's read it completely. Oh, that's how much I can show. Okay. Wait, let's just make it a bit bigger so you can, smaller, I mean, so that you can see the full answer. So we have the word here. The word prestigious is in fact, let's read the full answer first. The word prestigious is impactful as it is similar to being reputable, acclaimed, and distinguished. It showcases that the violin tournament Jason has successfully won is of high status, inspiring respect and admiration. This adjective has a positive connotation. It evokes emotions of happiness, joy, and pride. See, wasn't so bad. Completely doable, especially with these techniques. It helps you brainstorm. Some students, they can see the mind map very clearly in their mind. Some students need a bit more help. So here's your help, right? Helps you, find out all the connections this word has in your mind and be able to write it all down, right? So yeah, we have the word, we have 3 synonyms, we have the situation, the explanation of the context, we have the definition, we have the connotation, and we have the emotions. And that's a couple of sentences. That would get you your 2 marks or 3 marks, right? Okay, so now I've just shown you one sentence. But of course, in your exams, you have one full paragraph. So I will go through past year paper questions with these techniques in the next video. Bye-bye.